Hi guys, let's talk about the distributive property and combining like terms. First of all, with the distributive property, it takes on this form. Now I want you to remember that A, B, and C are variables, which means I can plug in absolutely positively any number into those spots. Now, according to the order of operations, I'm supposed to do B plus C first, and then I'm supposed to multiply times A. But whenever you have something like this, or when you have something you can't add together, it can actually be easier to do A times B and then A times C and then add afterwards. Trust me when I say those people who can do math really fast in their heads, this is what they use, although they don't always realize they're doing it. This can also take on multiple forms. For example, the A could be at the end instead of at the front. You could also have subtraction in the middle. And the same thing with the A being at the end. And like I said, this is how those people do the math really fast in their heads. For example, if I'm giving you 98 times 5, well, those people are separating that 98 to be 90 plus 8, and then they're multiplying times 5. Because I can do 5 times 90, 5 times 9 is 45, and just put a 0 on the end. And I can do 5 times 8 because that's 40, and then you add those together and that's 490. And it actually comes out pretty simple if you know how to do that. Now let's take a look at a couple of examples. 3 times x plus 4. Here's where I was talking about you can't always add what's in the parentheses because we don't know what x is. So I cannot do x plus 4 here. But I can do 3 times x, which gives me 3x, and I can do 3 times 4, which gives me 12. Now in this particular case, I leave that x alone. I don't know what x is, so my problem is actually finished at this point. If I look at the second problem, I have 4 times p minus 2. Again, I don't know what p is. So, in order to do this, I'm just simplifying here. So 4 times p gives me 4p. 4 times a negative 2. Notice I look at this minus 2 as a negative 2 here. So 4 times negative 2 gives me negative 8. And as I write down negative 8, as I read my finished answer, that actually reads 4p minus 8. Remember when we talked about integers, your minus is your negative is your minus. Okay, so let's look at a couple more problems. Here I have negative 9 times y plus 8. Distribute that negative 9 to the y, and I get negative 9y. Distribute the negative 9 to the 8, and I get negative 9 times 8 is negative 72. Again, as you're writing it down, it becomes your minus sign. So my final answer is negative 9y minus 72. Looking at the second one, if I distribute my negative 5 to the q, I get negative 5q. Distribute my negative 5 to the negative 7, negative 5 times negative 7 gives me a positive 35. So as you can see, this actually works both ways. A negative times a negative gives me a positive, and now I read that final answer as negative 5q plus 35. Now when it comes to combining like terms, let's say, for example, I had 2 apples. And then you give me 3 apples. Well, what do I have now? I have 5 apples. But then my sister comes along and she gives me 2 bananas. Now, would it make sense for me to say I have 7 bananas here or 7 apples? No, they're not the same fruit. I have 5 apples and 2 bananas. Oh, and then my Aunt Belinda comes along and she gives me 4 more bananas. I still cannot say I have 11 bananas here, or even 11 apples. I have 5 apples and I have 6 bananas. You guys would look at me crazy if I tried to tell you otherwise. And then I get 2 more apples. So I now have 7 apples and 6 bananas, which gives me a grand total, as I write this out here, of 7 bananas plus, or sorry, 7 apples. I can't even look at my own pictures. 7 apples plus 6 bananas. Now here's the crazy thing, guys. You were doing this in the 1st grade. I know it sounds silly, but you were doing this in the 1st grade. The only thing different now is I don't want to use pictures. I'm in junior high now. It looks kind of childish. So I am going to say that I have 2a plus 3a plus 2b plus 4b plus 2a. The only thing that has changed is I'm no longer using pictures. I'm using letters. So my grand total here is to say that I have 7a plus 6b. So let's try an example out, guys. If I have b minus 3 plus 6 minus 2b, I've got a positive b here and a negative 2b. I also have a negative 3 and a positive 6. Notice I always take the sign that's in front of the number, not behind. And just like with my apples and bananas, I can't add b's to numbers because they're just not the same thing. So if I look at those b's, I have a positive 1b and I have a negative 2b. Well, a positive 1 and a negative 2 gives me a negative 1b. And then if I look at my numbers, I have a negative 3 and a positive 6. Well, negative 3 added together with positive 6 gives me a positive 3. So my final answer there would be negative b plus 3. Looking at my next one, I have 10x plus 36 minus 38x minus 37. Well, that gives me a positive 10x and a negative 38x. I also have a positive 36 and a negative 47. Those are the things that are alike, and then I can actually simplify. So, looking at the x's, I have a positive 10x and a negative 38x. I will subtract there and because I have different signs, and that gives me a negative 28x. Now, looking at my numbers, I have a positive 36 and a negative 47, and that would give me a negative 11, giving me a final answer of negative 28x minus 11. So let's look at one more, and this actually takes our distributive property from the beginning of the lesson. First thing I would have to do is distribute. Negative 2 times 7 is going to give me a negative 14. Negative 2 times a negative n is going to give me a positive 2n. And then I still have left on the end that plus 4. Now if I look at that, I can actually add that plus 4 with the negative 14. So still simplify that even further. Negative 14 and a positive 4 gives me a negative 10, and then I still have my plus 2n. Now, I don't know what n is, so I cannot take this any further, guys, because you cannot add apples with bananas, just like you can't add nectarines with oranges. They're just not the same thing. Similar, but not exact. Now, if you have any questions, make sure to write those down and we can discuss them tomorrow in class. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.